podcast is sponsored by Kauri Wine Innovation. That's Kauri, Kauri, like the wood here in New Zealand, the native wood, in case you don't understand my American accent. They're suppliers of high-quality winery products throughout Australia and New Zealand. Please visit kauriwine.com and drop them a line. It's not just wine they help you out with. They also have what's called a Braumeister. What's a Braumeister, you ask, Dan? Well, you must not be very cool because everyone knows what a Braumeister is. It's a brewing kit for whole grain brewing. And I know it because I read it off this piece of paper in front of me right now. And guess what? They have them in both home brewer and commercial brewer sizes. Personally, I think you should get a commercial size and put it in your home if you can get the permits, that is. But anyway, just call your local council member and get the permits to put a commercial Braumeister from Kauri. No, of course not. That's not what Kauri. But that's actually why Kauri is so great. They have a home model for you and won't require any special permits. You can do some great home brewing, and they've got the awesome commercial model. And yeah, there's a couple wineries around town even now that are brewing. So local brews, local beer is great. Why not get yourself a Braumeister from Kauri? They have great commercial products as well from all the different winery range, and but they are big believers in the brewery as well. I even heard that guy Dean went to Philadelphia, my hometown, to go out to one of the world's best beer weeks, and I can attest to that. It is a great beer week. So anyway, Kauri's committed to knowing what's the best. Please visit kauriwine.com and check it out. We're also sponsored by decibelwines.com. By the time you read this, we'll release the Testify. By the time you listen to this, I'm reading. By the time you listen to this, the Testify Giblet Gravels Malbec will be out, and podcast listeners will get 10% off their first order. That's over $100 orders, and free shipping with anything over 12 bottles. By using the promo code DBPodcast at checkout. You guys know how to check out and put in promo codes, I'm sure. You know by the word promo code what that means. That's, all the old people pretend they don't know how to use the internet and technology, and they joke around about it all, but they seem to get really good at it when they need to use their grab-ons and Groupon, and they come in droves to restaurants for, buy one, get one's free. But anyway, the whole range of wines are up on decibelwines.com. Unlike anywhere else in the whole world, you just get the wines directly from us. If you're outside of New Zealand, it will take a bit longer, but remember, patience is rewarded with wine. So we ship to all 50 states in the U.S., yes, even your state. And just click on the country's flag and go to the store. We should have new countries up like UK, Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong. And the discount applies to all those countries. So for your first order. So just visit decibelwines.com and just click Shop Decibel Wines. Click on your flag and you'll figure out the rest. Welcome back to the Vintage Story Podcast. Yeah, so where are we at? Well, lots going on. I kind of thought it was fitting with James Millton on the podcast today that I might mention that, man, I've had a couple conversations lately with some growers, and times are always tough. Times are tough for growers, and, we have a water conservation right around the corner here in Hawke's Bay, and oh man, it's just tough everywhere in the world, but it's certainly not getting easier for growers everywhere. And if you're a grower and you're out there listening, go premium, maybe not all at once, go organic. I can say that there is a generation coming up now. I can count not on one hand, probably would take me almost two hands, of young winemakers out there and up and coming vineyards and up and coming people who would not only pay good price for quality fruit, but would pay even more for organic fruit. So just have a think about that. I don't know. I just had a very tough conversation with a couple who I won't say who they are, but they're growers, and they're going to pull out half, good part of their vineyard because they can't sell to one of the big guys anymore. And I'm thinking, man, you put all this work for all these years, and just because the business model's sort of changing, you're ready to give up. And it's not really a knock on them. It's just more like they don't realize that there's people out there like me who would love organic fruit, and would be happy to work with them and be happy to pay a little more, and not willing to squeeze them down in price, and willing to work with them for many, many years to come. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents in there. Also, this week I'm doing the Young Winemakers event for here in Hawke's Bay, which is part of the Greater New Zealand winemaker, Young Winemaker of the Year. I haven't normally done this type of stuff in the past, and I'm excited to do it. Lauren Swift, who, if you don't know much about Lauren, she is on episode 46 of this podcast, is a great person and is highly organized and is running this event here in Hawke's Bay, a former champion herself. And she asked me to do it. I'm excited to do it, and I hope I can tell you guys about it next week. I have a good feeling about it going into it, that it should be a cool experience, and I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, James Millton on the podcast today. What a conversation. Normally I am trying to get better about listening and engaging with my people. You'd be surprised, you might take that for granted, that when you have a conversation with somebody, you need to be in the moment. And maybe it was the fact that James was pulling me in a little more, and I was excited to talk to him. But he has a way of being very present himself and listening to what you're saying, and I just thought it was a really good conversation. And I mentioned once again this podcast medium, and how we need to have long conversations like this. And if you get the blip and read a little bit about James Millton in a wine writer magazine or something like that, something online, you might not get the true grasp of what this guy's about. I hope in this, I think it was just under 45 minutes or an hour or something conversation, that you get a little bit more insight into what the guy's about. I did try to play devil's advocate with a few things, like terroir and the orange wine scene. I hope I didn't push him. Well, I hope I pushed him, but I hope people understand that I love orange wines, and I love particularly the good ones, and I like that people push the envelope. So anyways, good conversation, and let's talk to James. Oh, and right as we get into it, before I could even turn the microphones on, we started talking about Steiner schools and here in Hastings. So that's kind of where the conversation starts out. There you go. Enroll her this early because it's so demanding, and that school in Hastings has such a reputation that it's in demand. So if you can just turn, at least speak in that general direction. You don't have to get very close, but if you can speak in the general direction,
I don't really do this very often, so bear with me.
Oh, it's fine. It's all set up to be to sound good, and
thank you for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Daniel was going to come to Gisborne to do this, and I thought it was too far to go for.
You made it easy on me, though. We were talking. We're started recording, by the way. We'll just get a conversation, James. But we talk about, man, if they had that train from Hawke's Bay to Gisborne, how much more often we'd go up there. But Gizzy's just sort of off on its own. But I suppose that suits you a bit, being up there.
Well, it's secluded.
Yeah.
Some people call it isolated, but the only isolated place is the Antarctic, I think.
Yeah.
We're secluded as this nice, warm environment that is far from the madding crowd.
Mm.
And in the world of wine, we're now promoting as being a mild and pleasant climate. everybody wants to have extremes of diurnal temperature, and
Yeah.
well, that's nonsense. How the hell would you like to live in a place like that? Whereas living in Gisborne and making wine is just like being in the most lovely secluded place you could be.
Yeah, it's great. We would like to get up there more.
So the train would be good.
Yeah,
But you've just got to deal with these people called bureaucrats.
I know.
And they tend to have, excuse the pun, tunnel vision.
So you're a proponent of that someday, or
Yes. When you think of a steam train, just travelling by train around New Zealand would be fantastic.
It would be amazing. And think about what goes on in Europe and how easy it is to travel around there. Yeah, I wish it was a little easier. We certainly didn't hold strong enough to our railroads in the States either, but there's a bit of resurgence in that now. Of course, now we have underground tunnels being built by Elon Musk, so we'll see how far that goes.
Going where?
Well, from essentially, I'm not sure where he lives. I'm going to say somewhere as far as, Santa Barbara or something. Maybe not quite that far, but into L.A. Right
really?
into L.A. Underground. Yeah. I don't understand how he's done it. I mean, he's obviously brilliant and he's got all the drive in the world, but he's sort of, they just, okay, do it, like go ahead. And he's built these tunnels where basically and when they try to criticize and say, oh, well, you're just building it in your neighborhood so you can get to LA. And he said, well, sure, but it's going to be people and bicycle get on first, and that's their demand.
Oh, really? And the tunnels are going to be bicycle?
You can you take your bike down a little tunnel and hop on, and they're these like little, they're sort of like little cars.
Yeah.
And it's not like one big train. There's stuff online you can see.
That's amazing.
So maybe we have that, but anyway, there's a lot of noise in the world.
And people are going too fast, aren't they?
Yeah. Which is, again, why I was saying it's good to just sit down and have a conversation sometimes. So, but we should start somewhere near the beginning. I know there's a bit of a story up on your podcast, but in your own words, when did it start for you as far as winemaking and that site or those sites up in Gisborne?
When I was 7, I wanted to grow things, and when I was 14, I wanted to ferment fruits. And when I was 21, I was in Europe. And when we got to be 28, my wife comes from Gisborne, and someone gave us an opportunity. And I think that in life, you're given one opportunity. And if your eyes are open and your mind is there, and you can see it, and you can seize it, then you should take it.
Yeah.
It's not like having a midlife crisis or a change of occupation or something like that. So it's been in the blood all the way through. So 35 years ago, we started Millton Vineyard. And I swear and declare if I had my life over again, I wouldn't call it after myself, because you'll never get a day off.
Yeah, that's true.
Because your balls are on the line from the time you pick up the secateurs to the time you squeeze the cork into the bottle.
Yeah, but you do want your name on the label somewhere, but maybe not on the front where...
Well, I'm not complaining about it, but because, it's like as I might have said, some people might think it's a lifestyle as opposed to a life sentence. Not saying that it's disagreeable, but it's certainly...
You're committed.
It's like the plate of eggs and bacon, isn't it? Do you know that story?
No.
The chicken only has a passing interest, but the pig had to be totally committed. And that's what we are, totally committed from the earth to the sky. So, 1984 we started taking over a family vineyard that was planted in these crass commercial varieties that big companies used to pay crap money for, and you just have to produce as much as you could. And then I was offered the chance of making wine from these. I said, don't be stupid. Look over the fence there. That farmer has got some beautiful sheep that he's selected for over the last 30 years. We need to do the same in the vineyard. So then we came back to the idea of looking at some varieties that we'd experienced in Europe, which is principally Chenin Blanc and then the time went on. So
was there a thought at that stage that you thought Chenin would suit the climate, or was it just you knew you wanted to make Chenin and it was quite versatile? And
it was a bottle of 1959 Moulin Touché from Anjou.
Fair
and
enough.
I opened the bottle during our first vintage when we were pressing Chenin Blanc, which had a little bit of botrytis in it. And we just looked at each other and went, wow, where does this come from? And that was sort of at that time. And then, of course, Sauvignon and Semillon were taking off, and we'd spent time in Germany, so Riesling was a fascination. And
What year was this around? 83?
80, 81, 82, and then we started making wine in 84.
Yep.
And it's just interesting in the world of wine, you see this rotation of desires, consumer demand, and climate change. And you have to sit there and ask the question, what is it that that we're really good at doing, growing, producing? What is it that we love? And therefore, what's our business plan? And the interesting thing about the business plan is that being certified organic and certified biodynamic, we have to say to the certifying agency what it is that we're planning to do and what we have done. So consequently, with all our 7 vineyards, they're all been certified for quite a few years. And so it's the best business plan that you can do.
Yeah, we were talking a little earlier about it, but, I don't own a vineyard, and so I can only speak on it from all my experience, but it just seems like the clock is ticking no matter what, that, the more, and everybody knows it, and it's an elephant in the room, that you should be going, doing things like dry farming and going organic, Yeah. We just had a great meeting with the Gibbet Gravels, and the conversation at the end, and this is from some of the big guys, or bigger guys, were directed at Dermot from Stonecroft, and how beautiful his wines were tasting, and how elegant, and how thick his skins were, and it's quite eye-opening.
And his vines are dry
farmed and certified organic.
Yes.
And there'll be haters out there that would say it can't be done on the gravels, or it can't be done here, and it drives me crazy. But
the only risk they take is that they'll be convinced.
Yeah, exactly. And then what will they do?
But you see the gravels here with the round stones, you have the ability to grow microbes at the bottom of the stone. It might be a metre down or 2 metres down.
Mm-hmm.
And they say the soil has got no moisture holding capacity, yet if they put compost on the soil and built up the life in the soil, or the stones, or the sand, or whatever it is in this instance, you'll get a little kingdom living underneath every stone, and that's where the vine roots will go, and that could be down into the cool, dark area, so underneath the stone, so that when you have adverse conditions like too much rain or not enough water, that the vines have their environment to live in.
The buddies to help them out,
Yeah, the buddies to help them out, exactly. And then as a result of that, they make phenols and tannins that are more juicy instead of being hard and blocky and astringent and aggressive.
Yeah, and I bumped into George Fistonich last year, and he told me face to face that I asked him, it was like one of my first questions for him. I said, how's it going? And he said, I got to say, we were a little scary in the beginning, but by far now our organic blocks are more resilient, and now they're starting to all go into our top wines. You know? So he's seeing the investment, And
well, you just got to look at Bordeaux now and see what's happened in the last 10 years. And, some of the best releases at the Empruneur have, Chateau Ponte Canet, and then this recently Chateau Latour is totally backing the system, and you have a look at what they're talking about, and by golly me, it's bio this and bio that, and you sit there and you go, what on earth are you doing this for? And they just want to look after their asset. Yeah,
I think we're a young country, but going back to what you were saying about looking over the fence at the sheep, do you think, it certainly sounds like at that stage there wasn't that thought into wine growing as looking after it like certain other industries were at the time. I even living in Hawke's Bay, for instance, that I see a lot more organic beef and organic vegetables than I see organic wines. Not to say there are some up-and-comers, but do you think the industry has been slow to that in New Zealand? And if so, why?
Maybe it's been slow because of these voluminous commodities that are being sold specifically in single varieties, as opposed to something that is going to be tasting nice with this organic beef or these organic vegetables, in other words, at the table or with friends. And, New Zealand has got all these sheep, and there's about 4 million of them that follow the sheep in front of them. So they keep doing what it is that the textbook has taught them, or the man in the white coat has taught them, and they keep following this, and they won't veer off the line until they get some awakening of their experience or their sensations. And then you just have to now look in New Zealand and even here in Hawke's Bay to see who is changing to organic. I'm not prophesizing that everybody should change to organic, but what I am saying is that people have got to wake up into their senses and realize what it is that they're tasting, as to whether it's juicy, it makes you salivate, or it makes your when you smell something, you see the twinkle in someone's eye because they've smelled something that is in a dream,
Yeah.
that they have had some time before.
Sense memory.
Yes.
That are sort of connected to things.
Yeah, and like relating a smell to a tone of music or to a feel of fabric.
Oh, you're speaking my language now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I did a speech at Pechacucha, I think it was last year. Yeah, probably last year. And that's all I talked about was sense memory and the fact that, my great-grandfather has sort of time traveled with me to this point. I mean, he's in my DNA.
Right.
But why is it that I've become obsessed with, Italian white wines and that why is it that much like music, sense memory it's like time travel. It puts you back into another place. And the best wines and the best experiences do that, and smell, you can walk into a kitchen and I can immediately be back in my grandmother's kitchen. What is that? We don't talk about that enough, and that there's something, I don't know if it's a trippy thing or if it's really a scientific thing or if we'll ever figure it out, but it is a thing, that's for sure. So, yeah.
How many notes in a decibel?
How many
An
notes?
octave.
Well, decibels, the level of sound,
Yes.
basically.
And so in an octave, there's how many? 7 notes?
7. Yeah, you were talking about sevens earlier. I meant to
Yeah.
mention that. So your age, but it's certainly all tied in, and music's tied into mathematics, and I constantly in my head going through how many parallels between what I used to do in the music industry and what I do now in the wine industry, and that sort of art and craft. And that in its best moments, you can't even define what's going on in the room or in the glass or whatever. It's just something that, and the best artists are able to do it, But also, there is a commercial side to it, and there is a scientific side to it, and there is, a craft side to it that you can't. It's not like you can just do it. You have to do all the work, and then it comes at you in different waves and at different times,
And then you have to do it in tune.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's the great equalizer too. We talk about a world that has, I don't know, prejudice, racism, this and that. If you talk to a musician, all they care about is can the other guy play. If you talk to, if we got a room full of, people and 20 of them were wine growers, they probably all end up in the corner talking to each other and wouldn't care where they were from. They would just say, what are you doing? And I've found that in the industry is like, if I've been in Europe, open arms, California, New Zealand, Australia, what are you doing over there? And they're curious and they want to know. So, it's sort of, an equalizer in that sense. There's no prejudice in what's good, and who can play, so.
And visiting France on the occasions that we do, and in the past, I used to say that I was a wine grower from New Zealand, and I would get just a shrug, nothing, no recognition at all. Not that I was trying to search for the recognition, I just wanted to find the common ground.
Yeah.
And then I would say to them, well, look, I'm a biodynamic wine grower from New Zealand. And there'd just be a shrug, And then finally it dawned on me, and so I said to them, je suis dans métier, which means I'm in the business. And that's when they turned around and said, come on, sit down and tell me what you do.
Yeah.
Exactly as what you were saying. And like with a room full of winemakers, how many of them are in the business because their commitment is there to it, or how many in the business because they want to make money, or how many in the business because they're employed to be in the business. And I think this is what's interesting in this trade at the moment, is that when, especially in Hawke's Bay here, you're getting this soulfulness coming into the wine and a sense of somewhereness, if that's not a cliche.
Well, I think some of that, I hope, is from the next generation and the sort of pioneers looking back on it as well and realizing everything that's happened. There's probably so much, my sense of it, I wasn't here, is that there was so much growth and so much happening from certainly the 90s onward that now it's a bit of a step back and a breath and say, what are we actually doing here? And what's going on? What are we making? What's our identity? Who are we? And it's complex too, because I'm from Philadelphia. I have Canadians here. There's Japanese. There's Chinese. There's Europeans all over the place. I have more French friends here than I know in Europe. And
What do you put that down to?
I put it down to a lot of people ended up here like me, which was it looked interesting, and some of them moved to other areas and then gravitated to here because of lifestyle and weather, and then realized that there is. I do think you need a critical mass, and that's part of why I was asking you about Gisborne, and it must be exciting sometimes to. I find it exciting to go to any wine region, but it must be cool to visit a slightly bigger wine region and a bigger community. Though we are, like I said, still trying to find our identity. There is a community here in Hawke's Bay. There is, and there's an establishment. And I joked around.
There's a cosmopolitan nature in Hawke's Bay.
There is. There's a bit of that as restaurants, and I remember. It's funny you say that because years ago when I first moved here, I looked up and the travel book. What is the big travel book that all the young tourists get or whatever? And I didn't know anything about Hawke's Bay, and I read it, and it said,
"What's it? Something with
Planet,
Planet.
a Lonely Planet,
Lonely
or
Planet,
something."
that's
Like,
one,
and
yeah.
and it said about Hawke's Bay. Kind of gave a description of the area and all typical stuff. They grow this and that, and this beaches are here, and it said, and beware of the locals, duchess and duchesses gliding from cafe to cafe, and there is a bit of that here.
That hasn't changed, has it?
No, I don't think so. I think there's still that, which is good. They support, they want good wines and they want good story and they want.
But you see, I think all these international people are here because there's a freedom that evolves here.
100%, yeah.
And from an artistic point of view, there's a clean palette, or no, a clean slate with a palette of multiple colors that you can use.
Yeah, well, I think some of us are doing some different things. There hasn't been a lot of, backed, don't do that here or anything like that. And that's exactly why I came here. I looked at Europe and just said, no way, I couldn't, at my heart, I guess I am entrepreneurial. And the only other place I looked was Washington State, and it just didn't look as exciting and new as Hawke's Bay did, or New Zealand overall.
Last night we've been down here in Hawke's Bay doing a presentation of food and wine for 2 days, and last night we had a dinner and there was some organic. One of the things that was served was an organic lamb, and honestly it just melted. And then they had truffles from Pukitapu, mandolin on top of some Jerusalem artichokes that were grown somewhere else, and then they had a salad, and in the salad was this fine-leafed little watercress that was growing in a particular stream below Timata Peak as some water was coming out of there. And I just looked at this foraging thing that is being evolving now, and then looking at the food, and then seeing the wines that you can put with it that are heroes in this region. And then the fish, that we had raw kawai. Well, kawai was only a bait fish a couple of years ago, and now here we are having it in a fine restaurant. And flounder from in the bay here, and wow, it's just...
Yeah, you see that with food. It kind of, and we see it even in New Zealand happen so quick, was, it went from, what was the leftovers is actually the soul food of the place, and that's a perfect example with the kawai. Yeah.
And so that was coming from Gisborne down to here for these few days. I'm we're going home with heads just overflowing with inspiration.
That's great.
And when you have inspiration, you become happy. And when you become happy, your vines see that you're happy. And when you have happy vines, you have happy wines. And when you have happy wines, you have consumers, friends, customers all over the world. And when they smell this wine and they get a twinkle in their eye, and they put it in their mouth and they savor it like this, and the best compliment we can get is when the customer goes, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
And they get different tones of Some people go and other people go depending on whether it's like a beautiful Chenin Blanc or a full-bodied Malbec or Syrah. Full-bodied Syrah must certainly be sort of
Yes, it's a bit more brooding.
Yeah.
So what are you growing now at Millton as far as the?
Well, we grow far too many different varieties because we think of an orchestra instead of a quintet. And but the varieties that we're growing are to represent sweet, sour, salt, and astringent, and umami. So we have one of the most northern vineyards of Riesling in the country, which we make a late harvest or semi-sweet, low alcohol wine, a Riesling, to represent sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And sour, we have Chenin Blanc for the acidity, and we want that to have a real mouth pucker as much as we can get, so that it makes you salivate quickly, within 3 seconds.
Sure.
Salt is what we have Viognier, and Viognier makes you salivate after about 7 seconds, so it's suited for, let's just categorize it as Japanese food or something that has got rice and nori. And
when did the Viognier come in for you? When did you plant
97.
that?
We were one of the first people who planted. Mainly because we saw eating culture was cascading out of the dining room and onto the footpath.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were drinking things more casually and not so precise fruit or acidity. So the Viognier is about the salt, but then it's also about the umami, the sense of deliciousness. Sweet, sour, salt, and the astringent is barrel fermented Chardonnay and Syrah to a degree. But now in this modern age, we're looking at these skin ferment white wines, and wines without any additions are a little bit cloudy. That's what the young somms and the opinionated restaurants and friends and family just want to sit there and drink and sing and be happy. So the varieties, therefore, then a Riesling, Chenin Blanc, and there should always be a red to the white, so there's Malbec, and Viognier, and so there's a red and white, Viognier and Syrah, and astringent, so there is Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and then other reds.
Yeah, I was just thinking of two different wines that were eye-opening. One was when I did do a visit up to your vineyard in could have been 09, and you may have not quite released your 07 Viognier yet, and I hadn't tasted a Viognier like that, and it was your top level.
Oh, yes, a Clos de Saint-Anne, yeah.
And 07 being the vintage that it was. I imagine it was pretty good up in Gisborne as well. I hadn't tasted something that expressive and understated at the same time to me. That was and there was a tension in there, and I think what I go back to saying, a moment in the room, and it didn't matter if there were proponents of biodynamics or what they thought about wine or anything. Everybody in the room looked at each other when they tasted that wine, and the same thing happened. This just after vintage this year, I bought a Gravner 07,
right,
orange wine, and I had I think those wines have peaks and valleys, and we
like any living thing.
Yeah, and we hit a peak, and there was possibly 20 different winemakers and growers in the room, and everybody stopped in their tracks. I didn't know if it was how it would go over. I just brought it because I thought, well, these people will appreciate it, and I'm not going to. This wine's not to be drunk by myself.
Yeah. But principally, like the Gravner wine, it's not made to be tasted. Like
exactly.
There's
food everywhere, and we were enjoyed.
Yeah, and drunk with friends,
and that's what happened. It got passed around, and we were having a great time.
That's a pretty old Gravner, 07.
Yeah, I luckily forgot about it for a while.
He doesn't put too much SO2 in there either.
No, and potentially why some I've opened have been questionable or curious wines, but not necessarily as wow. There wasn't a person in the room who thought, "What the heck is this stuff?" Some people who would not be into orange wines or skin fermented whites would say it takes away a little terroir, and this one had both. It had all the texture and all the things you'd want. And you knew at the same time this was a great Italian white wine, which are my favorite wines in the world. So
it might have been a good favorable moon phase as well.
That's probably. I have to look back at the date. I got my moon calendar up there. Yeah.
So you know what to do tomorrow.
I hope so. I don't know if I know what I'm doing, man.
But to get these wines to allow people to. When you say these orange wines that's been commented that they disguise the terroir, then, we could spend hours talking about that, because I can't find a place or a wine that epitomizes the terroir more than having this effect of the skin with the juice.
Yeah, when it's right, it's right. I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not. I think it's such early days for some of us. We just need a little patience and to figure it out, you know. And
I have a daughter, and she's 29 years old and making wine in the forest range in the Adelaide Hills in Australia, and completely natural wine. It's just absolutely amazing at 550 meters above sea level. And you know, she even puts earphones on the barrels when the wine's fermenting. And like, I looked at it and thought, that's a bit crazy, but you know, there's these things that these younger people are doing, and you know, you can feel this love in the wines.
yeah, I think that's the main thing is you have to find your way, and
particularly this next generation. Like, you think about how things were in the 60s compared to the 90s compared to the 2018s, and
the teens. We can call them the teens, can't we?
yeah, well, in those days. But there is a life cycle. There is a generation that it goes in this industry, and it seems to be like 30 years. And you see what's fashionable 30 years ago to what's fashionable now, or to what the people are drinking now. And it's quite interesting to see that rhythm and how it goes, like where Hawke's Bay is as a region, or where Gisborne is as a region, in terms of their evolution and their commitment to what it is that they do best.
Yeah.
And then the young people come along, and they want to do something that takes it yet to another level, which is really exciting if your mind is open.
Yeah, well, I found years ago when I went back to do a harvest in California, how fun it was. It was a place called Girard, but I kind of went to go work for them because they were an expanding brand. I could have gone and worked at a small premium research-ish kind of winery again, which was what I did the year before. And
where they wear white gumboots?
No, it was really small. It was just all single vineyard Cabernets and a bit of Chardonnay, called Pina, and just family owned, and really nice. It was a great experience. I thought I can't really top that as far as a small winery experience. So I went to work on a bigger team, and we just had fun. You know, so much fun working with, there was probably 4 or 5 people who had never worked in the industry before, and just to be around that again, and that excitement and learning curve. And then there was a lot of, there was probably 3 or 4 of us who had, half a dozen to vintages under our belt, and we're in it. And just to be around the team again was fun. It's good.
Enthusiasm.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So when people want to come and work at our place, we ask them 3 questions. The first one is, can you cook? The second one is, what music do you like? And the third one is, what's their star sign? And it's interesting to see the difference between Italians or Germans or French or Californians in this instance, as to how they take this questioning of their own self. And why do we ask that question? And the reason why we ask it is we want to see where they can fit into the orchestra that is a vintage. You can have the climatic conditions of vintage, but the sociological aspect of vintage is equally as important.
You gotta build the team.
And I'm a control freak too, being a left-handed Virgo, and so therefore, causes a few problems every now and then.
Yeah. How's that working out for this guy over here?
I think it works okay because he's English and he's got an opinion, and he's young.
Good.
And he's 28 years old, and so he's in this generational thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's sharp.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, we had a great team this year. I was sort of in and out at Paratua, and what a great thing to walk in and out. We just had a great mix of people there, and it made all the difference. It just music was great. We had I have my own influences as well that sort of come out of maybe a more, sort of 90s classic, and then some of the bands I used to work with and everything. We had this girl, Amy, who's Canadian, and she brought in tons of great music from her experience. And,
I listened to a Thai reggae band music last night. Can you imagine that?
Thai reggae? Well, it's near the ocean, right?
Yeah, you could almost smell the spice. You smell the spice in the sound.
I've been listening to, again, we're getting back to youth, a girl called Snail Mail out of Baltimore that is just floored me with her. She's a virtuoso anyway, classically trained, but she's just playing guitar and singing, and her lyrics are so mature, and it reminds me of something that would have come out when I was in high school. And this is her first album, and you can say, well, man, where's this kid going to go? This is great. And then the other one is the jazz pianist Joey Alexander, who's a virtuoso. He's 13 or 14 years old from Indonesia.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
he is, first of all, there's classical virtuosos, which you say, okay, well, this kid's just been practicing so much. And yes, there's probably talent there too. But jazz,
They have a different rhythm?
it's a different rhythm, and it's a different, it's improvisation. And he can take a John Coltrane song and make it his own. And how do you do that? He was doing this at 9, and, Wynton Marsalis and these great jazz legends were saying, you can't question this. It just is, that's why did this happen? Why him? It just is, listen to this kid play. And it's like he gets possessed. We can pause it for a second. No worries. Yeah, no worries. Without a blip, modern technology. Nobody
Just
will know
like
the
that.
difference. Pause. Here we are again.
So this rhythm of music through the cultures, and therefore then the rhythm of music through the cultures, and then bring that into taste and wineries, and what sort of people you're working with, or vineyards.
I think that's really important. That that question about music, particularly for me, I don't know as much about the signs, but I'm certainly open to it, and I've seen trends. But with music, you can tell just how you would respond to that email too. Like you said, first of all, is it a step back for you, or is it, oh, I can't wait to tell them what I'm into,
Yes,
and I'd be that way. I'd be like, what's the latest things I'm listening to?
Because he's interested in me.
Yes.
And
yes.
What
absolutely.
are they doing? Especially these young people, they want to they're in their zone of inspiration, so they want to be part of that. But going back to orange wines or skin fermented wines, and we're getting a lot of compliments for it from a particular genre, and we're getting a lot of criticisms because we're an old established wine brand, and what are we doing these stupid things for? And so, it's in the international printed media where people are saying these wines are terrible, but it's in the international social media that everyone's going, wow, these things are incredible. And
inspiring, going back to that word too,
Yes, yes. But also, I made a comment the other day that, how is it? Orange is to wine what punk is to music.
Mm.
And not everybody liked punk music, but it's still music.
And it's it's a shifting, it's going to shift the parameter, it's changing things. So.
Yeah, and a vivid expression about a sensation.
And it's certainly needed, and obviously not only the consumer base, but the industry, this is great. Why wouldn't you embrace it and say, let's try to figure this out and go with it? And it doesn't mean that you can't do it. You just have to do it good. You have to do it well with the best intentions and make a great wine.
And you can't play good music on an untuned guitar, can you?
It's going back to more analogies with that. Every day it's you got to put the work in, and it's the same principles. It's just why not? So I tasted. Amy made one of her Aperitua this year that I tasted, and it was the first time I watched something from fruit all the way till it's not in bottle yet, but it's in barrel, and it was exciting. And now we're tasting it, and she had a vision with it. And
what did she make it from?
Pinot Gris, and she had a little Gewurz in there from a little part of the vineyard, which kind of, you had that. I think I tasted one up at Miller Road where you had a little bit of, was it a bit of muscat in it or something?
No, we had that. It was called Libiamo, and
yes,
it was Gewürztraminer.
I thought you said there was a hint of another varietal in there.
Well, we had a field blend, which is Viognier, Marsanne, and Muscat.
That's the one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I've had both of those. But
okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Like Viognier, Marsanne, and Muscat is once again there's bass notes, tenor and treble notes, and taking it through into the glass. It's so exciting.
Do you think? Do you know the term synesthesia? Which,
of course.
Yeah. Which I joke around that I suffer from it, but I think it's a benefit, and I've often been called out for saying colors and tones on my palate, or that I hear.
Yes. I mean, you take a glass of wine and you smell it, swirl the glass and smell it, and then you take the glass of wine, same glass, and swirl it and smell it with your eyes closed. and then you go through that process and ask the person to tell you what colour they see.
Yeah.
And then you give them 4 fabrics: silk, satin, linen, and lanolin, and tell them to go through the same processes again, close their eyes and smell it, and hold on to the different fabrics and see the colour changes in their mind's eye. And then you have to ask them at the end of it, is it sweet, sour, salt, or astringent? It's like you can do it with children of all things.
They're the best at it.
Between the ages of 7 and 14, yeah.
They're a profound experience that
Mind you, they shouldn't be drinking.
Yes, no, but just even if it's just smell, it's something I would have never thought of that turned out to be a great thing, and it just shows you why you should put your hand up. The very first weekend I was in Hawke's Bay, I volunteered to go work for. I saw there was a Harvest Hawke's Bay, and that EIT was going to do a workshop, not a workshop, but they were going to do a tasting, and I said I'll volunteer to go. The first weekend I was here to help out at this. I said I would love to just go meet some people and do this. And what it was they mixed up flavors in the lab, I think, of Sauvignon Blanc, right? Okay. So they had a passion fruit glass and a guava glass, all the way down the line. And 99% of the time, if they walked out with their parents and kids, the kids blew away the parents at guessing every right. Yeah. And you were meant to match what you smell and what do you think you smell, and then you flip the card over and that's guava, that's passion fruit, that's capsicum, blah, blah, and the kids, the fresh palate on these, 7-year-old kids that were walking up was hilarious. And I thought, this is the coolest thing I'm going to take away from this, it was great.
I mean, it's mostly against all the licensing laws and like that. But, again, these...
it wasn't wine. It was just smells.
But, I mean, like my kids, there always was and always is wine on the table. And... they've got the most vivid imagination, to my mind, and they can undress a glass of wine just in a smell. I did a tasting in the city on a Saturday afternoon in a wine shop, and so we had about 20 people in front of us on the front of our table, and there's this man there with his daughter with him. And she was going, Dad, come on, I want to go. And he was saying to her, shh, darling, just give us another few minutes or so. And I said to him, excuse me, but can I give your daughter a glass to see what she smells, to see how she smells? And he goes, oh, gosh, anything to keep her quiet. And so I passed the glass over to her, and I said, I want you to take this glass, close your eyes, swirl it, and smell it, and tell me what colour. And these 20 adults sort of thought, well, this is fairly nutty. And there was quietness there. And she took the glass and did exactly that. And she looked up at me, and she said, I smell yellow. And I went, it was a Chardonnay. I said, yes, that's exactly it. So, well done, good on you. And
she's hooked.
We kept on doing our wine tasting with the other people, and I looked over at her 20 minutes later, and she's still grasping this glass, and just with a huge smile on her face because she had smelled a colour in her dream world. It was just amazing to see that she had gotten into the space.
Yeah, we're the same. I put every glass I pour in front of my daughter's nose.
Yeah, and your daughter again is 3 years old.
Yeah, so I hope, again, going back to that sense memory, I hope, that's all we can, from anything I have experienced in my life, is the best we can do is give experience and engage with our children,
And again, the thing is, like, from conventional viticulture or wine growing to organic to biodynamic wine growing, it comes down to the point of the reason you do it is because you can be bothered. Whereas if you sit on a tractor all day spraying herbicides, you don't really give a rat's ass about, the only thing you think about is when I'm going to get the job finished. You don't have the ability to smell the earth being turned or look around and have this feeling, and that transpires when you go home as to how your children pick up how your vibe is from, like, I'm not trying to sound too egalitarian, but it's just, you go to an organic wine growers meeting and everybody's happy. Yeah. It seems to be that everybody's happy.
Yeah. And for the right reasons. Yeah. Contrary, if you go to, I wouldn't even say a winery, but just a sort of dry corporate atmosphere, everybody's miserable, and it could be any industry, And when I think people are engaged to work with their hands and be a part of it and passionate, and of course it's going to go that way. Well, I was just thinking when you brought up organic and biodynamic again, for the novice out there, and I'll put myself in that camp for the moment. Explain
What it is.
biodynamics. Obviously you're not going to do that in 5 minutes, but
It generally takes 2 days, so we'll
yeah,
be quicker.
2 days or 20 years, but or 21 years, I should say. What do you do at Millton? How did that start, and when did you discover biodynamics? And
So, going back to the beginning, is a conventional way of doing things is that you have to be in control of the disease. So you have to be on top of the things that are going to go wrong. And then when you come to organic, then you stop using herbicides and you stop using systemic chemicals and you stop using soluble fertilizers. And it's really the things organically is what you don't do, as well as keeping your environment clean and stuff like that. So it's what you don't do. So you're not controlling, but you're starting to work with things, nature, in a way that is sensitive to the environment. And then with biodynamics, it's a step on from that, and we say it's what you do that matters, because bio is about life and dynamic is about energy. And so when you think of the word dis-ease, then we take the dis and throw it away, and we look at the ease. I mean, it sounds so coy, it's almost laughable. We look at the ease and we say, okay, in the given situation, how can we make this easier? The climate and the weather conditions are such that they want things to grow or they want things to retract. And so we have to be able to stimulate that situation by using compost teas or herbal preparations or things like that. And what happens at the end of all of that, you get this soil life under your feet that is just making so much noise. It's like it's so loud because there's so much microbial activity going on there. And the roots of the plants are living in this microbial activity and then coming up through the leaves. And so you have the earth, the water, the air, and the light, and keeping that in harmony and balance. And then, so that's what we do. And our work is done also in relationship to the position of the moon.
Mm.
So the moon goes around this earth in 29.3 days. And in that time, it passes through the 12 constellations. And the research has shown that each of those 12 constellations, there's 3 of them that relate to Earth, there's 3 of them relate to roots, there's 3 of them relate to leaves, there's 3 of them relate to fruits, and there's 3 of them that relate to seeds. And so you look at a grapevine and realize that it's a fruit with large seeds and a thick skin. So you find ways of trying to stimulate the moment in that 29-day rotation that is building up the health and strength and ease of the plant. And after a long period of time, then same thing for the work in the winery. If you want something to ferment, then 48 hours before a full moon, you can give the barrel a little stir or enhance the fermentation process like that. And conversely, when you're bottling something, you want it when the moon is descending so that the aromas and fruit characters don't escape too much.
Mm-hmm.
And then that carries on to the tasting of when you can do the wine. Not saying that you must taste the wine on this day or not that day.
You'll get different characters.
You get different characters. And sometimes I go home at night time in the winery and think, my God, these wines taste so good. They're amazing, and I feel very enthusiastic about them. And other times you feel a little bit somber.
Sounds like Pinot Noir to me.
Yeah, yes. So that's what the difference is between chemical or conventional, organic, and biodynamic.
How, easy enough to follow that path or that to bottle and to taste and appreciate how it's going to taste, but how often do you find yourself challenged with in a given season with picking when you want to pick and fermenting, or is it just a matter of we're just going to wait before the full moon comes?
That's interesting, because when you don't use chemicals to control fungus, the learned people say, oh gosh, you must be subjected to
having to pick it when you don't want to pick.
Having to pick it when you don't want to. But in actual fact, the opposite happens, that you can actually wait for that event to pass or wait for that ultimate moment,
mm-hmm.
and then take advantage of it there. Of course, in a vintage, you only get one chance a year, so you have to be on your best form, and you can't control the weather per se. And so there could be that you've got to pick things on the wrong time.
Mm.
But it's, all of our, when we can pick the right time, that it follows through in the quality of the wine, right to the bottle and even beyond, because it's got this rhythm in it. It's
I
got
mean,
this.
I could certainly attest to seeing it, now that you put it in that terms, which I'm not unfamiliar with this concept, but I certainly can see the idea of, man, it was a tough vintage, but, we were able to leave it hang out and pick it when we wanted because of the weather. But in this case, because of the way we've treated it all the way along, man, we didn't have that great of a summer, but when it was ready when we picked it. And conversely, man, we had a great summer and we left it out too long or picked it too early, and because of XYZ. So that time is so important. And so I guess the question is have you seen that in a wine where you had a great summer and you're like, man, we couldn't pick it when we wanted to according to our calendar, and that wine may have been a solid wine, but not quite there in your opinion. Is you open up, I don't know, an 09 something, and you go, man, that's right, that Viognier that year we had to pick it a day later or a week later than we wanted it, or whatever it was.
I think that, as well as it's coupled. Like I'm never satisfied. I'm never happy with the result that we get, because it's just not quite reaching the point.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have some really amazingly, excellently fantastic wines, but we could always do this that little bit better.
Yeah, sure.
And when we look back on, say, what 09 was like, as I said before, it's about social activities and environmental activities. And, we only get this, it's this frustrating thing, you only get one chance a year.
Yeah.
And so there was an old expression that I heard, is that come vintage time, you may turn your head, but never take your eye off what's happening.
Yeah.
So you just can't go home on Friday night and say, well, we're going to pick grapes on Monday.
No.
And I, that's just our little situation. If we were running a bigger winery or had other interests, then it might be a different story.
Yeah. I'm going to sort of request, if you haven't heard this already, there's a phenomenal podcast called Radio Lab out of America, out of New York. And it's pretty science driven. There's a little bit of other elements to it, but there's a fantastic episode that I'll dig up for you to listen to, and it's about a forestry woman in Oregon or Washington, I can't remember, who basically grew up in a family of forestry, and then she became a PhD in whatever that degree would be, and started really researching different forests, and found that an incredible relationship between the fungus in the forest and the trees in the forest. So much to the point where, when she sort of started mapping everything out as best she could and expanded out, that she thought it looked like a brain, that the fungus and the reciprocal relationship between, all the plants, but particularly the trees of this giant forest, and what was going on with the fungus, and messaging underground, basically, so that if some beetle or something came in on one end of the forest, by the time it got to the middle of the forest, the leaves didn't taste good to the beetle anymore, and he buggered off. And I distinctly remember, I think I was working in the winery that day, and just like mouth to the floor of somebody who came at this not with any intentions at all, but just was a very good researcher and had some really cool data and some really interesting. And I would love for you to hear it and ask you about it again some months from now. It was really cool. And there was all kinds of other stuff with it was near some brown bears, and they were eating salmon, and the salmon was going into the earth and then showing itself again in the trees, and it's just mind-boggling stuff about nature that we just dismiss on a daily basis.
We're still left to question where the World Wide Web actually did start.
Yeah, exactly. It's all underneath us,
And then, we have this, my email footer says, you may think we're standing on dirt, but it's really the rooftop of another kingdom. And then the funny other thing is that you hear about tree huggers, and if you want to divide an audience by about 99.9% and you start talking about hugging trees, then they throw you out the door pretty quickly. But now with what you're talking about with this podcast and what we're hearing about this not new, but there's revelations about trees talking to each other and stuff like that, then you have to it's a wacky stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, and the fungi just as messengers too, which
Yeah.
is and they have this symbiotic relationship where they're basically mining minerals from some of the rocks and then giving it back to the tree. It was just fascinating. So,
Well, again, the thing is that with biodynamic wines, let's say, and orange wines, then this whole concept of producing polyphenols in the plants as a defense mechanism so that the leaf tastes bitter to that beetle that was going to eat it. And that tree or that vine tells the next vine that there's a beetle coming
absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm getting at is that, you know, you have to, we look at the whole ecosystem or what, you know, and what's going on underground and this messaging between vines and messaging between vineyards and, you know, it's a lot more going on in there. And
Well, then again, the thing is in the wine, you can have this biological antioxidant, which is the phenolics in the wine derived from the skins and the seeds. And so as a result, you have the opportunity to use less chemical antioxidants if you're doing that. Or else in the orange wines, then the pucker factor in the mouth is longer but softer. So you don't have to add anything to the wine to make it taste agreeable because it's got this sensation of completeness to it just through building up the soil.
Yeah.
Grapevines, huh?
We've seen it just around the house here. You know, we've done just simple things, and I mean, we've seen these like waves of things happen that like beetles or ladybugs this past year were just everywhere. You know, and I thought, oh, that's a good sign. You know, and bees and things like that. You know, and certainly, and that's just this little area right here. You know?
So like in our vineyard, we have cows to make manure, and the manure is part of the earth and the water. And we have bees to make honey, but also to bring what's called the astrality into the flowers of the grapevine, so that the smell becomes more lifted, and the bees look after the air and the light. So the bees control the insect world, and the cows control the understory. So in a harmonious situation, it's really far out. It's amazing.
Yeah, I got to get back up there. It's been too long since I've been over to your vineyard, but
It may not be perfect, but parts of it are excellent.
well, sure. Is nature perfect? You know.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could probably. Are you good? You anything else you wanted to say? Or?
Well, you know, it's 2 days we've got to fill in. But,
Yeah.
You know, I'm pretty. Thank you for asking these.
Yeah, I get a feeling
Awesome
we'll
questions.
probably do this again at some point because this will probably spawn. This whole thing for me is based on curiosity, so
Yes.
this will spawn more questions, and I'm sure I'll, like any time, much like you always want to get better. I'm going to listen to this or think about this days and weeks from now and go, man, I should have asked that or that, but that's okay. We can do it again.
I think in conclusion, what we'd want to say is that with this multifaceted look at your senses, that some listeners might think it's weird. But what I see in the world is that we're becoming the new normal, what we're doing, from a food point of view, from a wine point of view, from an environmental and social point of view. That if it is a bit weird to people, then all you do is look at yourself in the mirror and smile, and the next day you'll see the world in a different aspect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. That was great talking to James. I really do hope we can do it again. Okay, KariWine.com, DecibelWines.com, Milton.co.nz are the sites you want to visit. At Decibel Dan on Instagram and Twitter. You can always visit at Vin Story Podcast on Twitter, Decibel Wines on Facebook. Talk to you guys soon.